What's up, guys? The UFC Abu Dhabi Fight Night card just wrapped up, and it was a solid card. I would say like a 6 out of 10. Good Fight Night card overall. And on this card, I didn't do too well in the picks. I got 6 out of 12 fights correct, which is like 50%. Definitely not one of my better cards. More underdogs won on this card than favorites. 7 underdogs won, and 4 of them were at least 2-1 underdogs. That is crazy. I did get 2 of them, Bogdan, Guskov, and Tabatha Ricci, but not Reinier de Ridder, Salikhov, Davey Grant, Billy Elekana, and Martin Buday. So this was the card of the underdogs. But let's go into the main event, where Reinier de Ridder defeated Robert Whittaker by a split decision. 2 48-47s for him and 1 48-47 for Whittaker. Isn't it crazy these two are in the same weight class? But that main event wasn't the most exciting. I think the first 3 rounds were more entertaining, and then the last 2 RDR was just wall installing, keeping Whittaker on the fence and just throwing strikes. Whittaker really didn't do too much in those 2 rounds, man. He just like let off a lot of his offense. Now, I think a big reason for that is because of the knees to the body that RDR was landing the entire fight. I mean, from the first round to the 5th, this gargantuan Dutchman in there was just piercing his liver with those knees, man, over and over again throughout the fight. It's understandable why Whittaker started to slow down so quickly. RDR is not the most explosive fighter. He's not super fast or anything, but when you're that massive, he was the 225-pound champion at 1. It is absolutely insane how much bigger RDR was in there. RDR knew exactly what he needed to do to win the fight. The 4th and 5th rounds mostly were to neutralize Robert Whittaker's offense, pressuring the fight with the clinch, and just land as many strikes as he could to win on the scorecards. And it worked perfectly because Whittaker was completely absent of throwing strikes in the clinch. Like, he may have thrown at most 10 in the entire fight. He was looking to just get out of the clinch instead of landing shots while he does it. And RDR is so much bigger that it's going to be very difficult to fight your way out of there as he's imposing his strength on his opponent. And he's going to have that advantage against 99% of fighters he goes up against. Dricus and Hamza are probably the only 2 guys at the top of the rankings that can fight him off from the clinch. And it's very funny because at distance, he only has like a few strikes he throws. He doesn't throw that much out there. He has a jab and he has a knee to the body. Sometimes he'll flail a big haymaker or throw up a high kick, but those come in occasion. The common techniques he uses are the jab and the left knee to the body. RDR did a very good job of targeting the body to slow Whittaker down because Whittaker's speed is one of his biggest assets. It's one of the biggest advantages he has over RDR. So it was intelligent game planning, but Whittaker should have expected those, right? He should have expected the knees, especially because he beat his last opponent like that. And further into the fight after those knees, RDR did a very good job of keeping him on the fence, using his size advantage, and constantly landing body shots in there. Now, they're not the biggest shots in the world, but when you're exhausted, and you're the smaller guy, the pressure against the fence and the continuation of shots to the body are just going to wear him out even more, especially when he's landing like 70 of them inside the 5th round alone. That was a lot of strikes he was landing, but Whittaker was very fast for the 1st and 2nd rounds. He even dropped him with a right overhand, fading out laterally. Right hand clobbers RDR's jaw. I thought Whittaker was going to finish the fight right from there, but man, this guy is tough. It was somewhat similar to the way Jorge Masvidal landed that fade out hook on Colby Covington. It's like a big step to the side and bringing all that momentum with the punch to follow through. Huge amount of power in shots like that. Whittaker looked good in moments, but he's definitely not in his prime anymore, man. He is somewhat washed. Like, he is not the same fighter he used to be. But for the most part, Whittaker was working off his jab. He was trying to land the right hand, defended most of the takedowns, but RDR just kept moving forward. He kept bringing the pressure, kept shooting takedowns, kept throwing knees to the body, wearing Whittaker out. And frankly, he's going to benefit from this against everybody he fights. He is going to be the biggest guy in there no matter who he's against. And because of that, he could take some big shots and he could keep moving forward, tiring his opponents out in this war of attrition that he creates in the octagon. And even for a guy who's been 5 rounds many times, it was hard for him to keep up with RDR, getting away from the fence and not getting clinched up every moment. And it just seemingly is inevitable that the plot needs to have Dricus du Plessis versus Reinier de Ridder at some point in their careers. There's like a force at play that's forcing these two to eventually collide. In the goofiest fight we will ever see. Can you imagine a fight like that ends with a double knockout, like they KO each other? RDR lands a knee to the body. At the same time, Dricus lands an overhand, and they both get knocked out. Dricus can't stand up from the liver shot. RDR is out cold from the punch to the jaw. The fight between them two will be so hilarious. And the thing is, they've trained together before. They've sparred each other. They've talked about it before, and it's very interesting. Now, who should these two fight next? I think RDR can fight Adesanya, he could fight Strickland, or he could fight the loser of the title fight. All 3 of those fights make sense. But Adesanya said he wants to fight Strickland. He wants that rematch. If that's the fight, then we'll do RDR versus the loser of the title fight. And perhaps that's when he fights Dricus if Dricus loses, or he'll fight Hamza, which will be very interesting. And as for Whittaker, I think he should fight Roman Dolidze. And if he loses to someone like Roman Dolidze, he should retire. Losing to Dolidze shows a huge decline in his skills. And then Petr Yan defeats Marcus McGhee by unanimous decision, 29-28. The first round was close. Marcus McGhee landed some big shots there. They both stunned each other somewhat in the second, but Jan was definitely taken over after. His adjustments and reads throughout a fight are some of the best I've ever seen in the UFC. McGhee was throwing a lot of lead right uppercuts from the southpaw stance to line up his left straight, and sometimes he would even end the combination with that too, but initially, Jan was getting hit by some of those, but then he adjusted, started countering them, and especially countering the exits of Marcus McGhee. Then started to intercept the combos by blocking the initial shot, and then countering before the second one was able to get through. And man, he gets that outside step trip on everybody he fights. The first time he threw it out there, it missed. McGhee evaded it. But then later, after he had McGhee up against the fence for what felt like 2 minutes straight, the referee had to tell Jan 3 times that if he doesn't advance his position, that he would separate them. Well, he never did. To be fair though, Jan did go for a takedown and got him down momentarily before McGhee stood up. McGhee looks very strong, man. For McGhee to stand up that quickly, sprung right to his feet. But then after they disengaged away from the fence, then Jan again went for that outside step trip, landed it, got McGhee to the ground, and then strung it immediately with a Kimura. That combination right there was so insane. The trip into an instant Kimura is only stuff you see from fighters at the skill level of Jan, man. And he deserves a title shot. I thought he should have fought for the title before instead of Sean O'Malley, but now he fought someone much lower in the rankings, beat him. He's on a 3-fight win streak, beat Deiveson Figueiredo, and beat Song Yadong. The rematch between Merab and Jan needs to be the next fight. Now, do I think he beats Merab? No. I don't think anybody beats Merab, but that shouldn't exclude a shot to a title, even though he lost to him before. There's nobody else for Merab to fight after Corey. If someone has to fight for a title, someone has to fight Merab next, especially now that Merab is very active as a champion. Once he beats Corey, he's not going to wait a long time to fight again. So there needs to be another contender, and the most deserving is Jan, right? Because you can't give it to Song Yadong. He lost to Jan. You can't give it to Deiveson Figueiredo. He lost to Corey and Jan. You can't give it to Chito. You can't give it to... we'll see with Mario Batista. If Mario Batista beats Umar, then he might get a title shot. I don't think he beats Umar, though. So as of right now, Jan should be the next guy for Merab, until we see what happens in the Umar and Batista fight. So let's do Merab versus Jan too. But Marcus McGhee had an excellent performance. He was a big underdog in this fight. He's 9 spots lower in the rankings, and gave Jan a very good fight. Landed some good shots, had good combinations, kept up technically with Jan for like a round and a half before Jan started to really get ahead, which he usually does in his fight. So I think Marcus McGhee, even though he lost, should fight someone higher ranked than him. I think Chito Vera is a great fight. Marcus McGhee versus Chito Vera is a fight I honestly think McGhee can win. So let's do Merab versus Jan and Chito versus McGhee. And Shara Bullet defeats Marc-Andre Barriault by unanimous decision. 30-27 across the scorecards. This is an example that a 30-27 fight doesn't mean one fighter dominated the other. It was a very good fight. Marc-Andre Barriault definitely put on a much better performance than most expected. He was a heavy underdog going into it. Most thought that Shara Bullet was going to defeat him easily, but he fought the best way he could and used all of his skills. Unlike Nikita Krylov earlier on the card, Marc-Andre Barriault uses wrestling, he uses striking, a lot better defense, and while he was pressuring Shara Bullet, who's usually moving around the octagon, he was sitting behind that guard to block punches and enter past those. A tough, gritty performance from Barriault, but Shara Bullet won the first round off the leg kicks. That was like the least exciting round of the fight. The second round was insane, man. Both guys hurt each other. Barriault rocked Shara Bullet with a right hand that broke his nose, and it came off the success that Shara Bullet had with his elbows. The clinch strikes throughout the fight were the big reason as to why he won this fight, but there was a moment where he threw an elbow from slightly longer range, not in the clinch. He tried to land an elbow from further out. Barriault timed it by slipping on the outside of it and landed his right hand as Shara Bullet ran his head into it. Shara Bullet showed his heart in this fight, even without able to breathe out of his nose. Still had good cardio, not only for the rest of the second round, but even in the third round as well. Still continued the crazy flashy kicks that usually takes a lot more energy to throw. He landed more elbows in the clinch and then knees that hurt Barriault. He threw up a head kick after. Barriault had to scale around the fence to get away from him, and ultimately Shara Bullet won that second round. Then in the third, that third round showed why shooting takedowns as a striker can greatly benefit them. So Barriault is continuing his pressure in the third round. Shara Bullet, on the back foot, he shot a double leg to not only offset Barriault, not thinking that Shara Bullet would shoot a takedown in this fight, right? This guy's a flashy striker. His wrestling hasn't been too great throughout his career, but he shot the double leg to offset Barriault, reversed the position, so now he rotated around Barriault with that takedown, then had him closer to the fence. And instead of completing the takedown, he used it to rise into the clinch, where he had so much success throughout the fight, landed knees and dropped Barriault because of it. Very high fight IQ right there from Shara Bullet, man. Used that takedown to get a better position in the octagon by rising into the clinch and then landing those knees again. Amazing fight from both fighters, and ultimately a great win for Shara, man. So Shara, before he lost to Michael Page, was in the rankings, right? So if there was a top 20, he'd be ranked somewhere in the top 20, right? Roman Kopylov is the perfect fight for Shara. Both have good distance striking. They like to sit in the center of the octagon and just throw in a kickboxing approach. That is the fight to do next. Roman Kopylov versus Shara. And they announced Lerone Murphy versus Aaron Pico to headline a fight night card. So I don't think it's as good of a fight for Aaron Pico. I think Murphy's going to try to point fight to a decision and constantly move around the octagon. It's going to be a tough stylistic fight for Aaron Pico. Also, Almabayev defeats Jose Ochoa by unanimous decision, 230-27, 129-28. His wrestling was just too much. His chain wrestling goes on point, decent top control, got the back in the first round, went for the face crank. It landed some good right hands even in the stand-up, but Ochoa did get taken to the ground for throwing a kick at one point. He dropped into an arm-in guillotine, which 90% of the time it doesn't work. The fighters today are so good at defending it, and just like in this fight, Almabayev got out of the choke, sat on top, landed some ground and pound shots, but Jose Ochoa had some good moments throughout the fight as well. He did get the back of Almabayev at the end of the first round, but it looked like the wrestling just offset him the whole fight. He couldn't get a good rhythm going because of the constant takedowns from Almabayev, and especially at flyweight where most of these guys don't have one-punch knockout power, and that spamming takedown style does seem especially strong at flyweight because they generally have the cardio to fight that way for 3 to 5 rounds, and there's not as much punching power in this division to capitalize on a failed takedown like in the heavier division. So Aslan Almabayev is most likely going to be a consistent contender in this division, merely because he's one of the few fighters that fights that way. So good win for Aslan Almabayev. He took a risk here fighting Ochoa because Ochoa's not even ranked and he's number 9. If he were to have lost to Ochoa, he would have dropped in the ranking, especially because he lost to Manel Kep before this too. So 2-fight loss streak, then losing to someone who's not even ranked, but he took the fight and beat him in every round. So I think his next fight should be Alex Perez or Tatsuro Taira. I think Taira would be a more interesting fight. Both guys are grapplers. Taira is very slick on the ground. He has extremely good submissions. That would actually be the better fight. So I would do Tatsuro Taira versus Aslan Almabayev. And Anthony Smith is back with a big win against Nikita Krylov. Bogdan Guskov dropped him with one shot, finished the fight on the ground. Krylov went for the leg lock and got ground and pounded to a finish. But Bogdan Guskov was waiting for that one counter shot for Krylov to move forward into, and eventually happened like 4 minutes into the fight. Krylov walked forward with no feints at all, very telegraphed, and Bogdan Guskov, as a sniper that he is, you cannot make mistakes like that in front of him. You can't walk forward and just throw a strike without getting countered. This is the second fight in a row that Krylov walked into a knockout. He walked straight first into the left hand of Dominic Reyes and got KO'd, and now he walked straight into the right hand of Bogdan Guskov while throwing a telegraphed inside leg kick and got finished for that too. And he didn't even shoot a single takedown in either of those fights. He tried to strike with the superior strikers, even though he's one of the few well-rounded guys in this division. He can strike, he can wrestle, he can grapple, but in this fight, as well as his last one that he got knocked out in, he decided to fight in a one-dimensional way. Just use his striking against the superior strikers and not shoot a single takedown. Nikita Krylov is at his best when he's mixing up his striking with his wrestling. That is when he's at his best. But he didn't fight that way. He fought just as a striker. A mixing of the striking and takedowns would have done a lot better for Krylov than just striking with Guskov. For 4 minutes in the fight, he could have shot at least one takedown, right? But it looked like his game plan was not to do that at all. I mean, Krylov has been fighting for such a long time. For him not to shoot a takedown like that is crazy. Like, you would think after all of that experience at MMA, he would know not to fight Guskov with just a striking approach. In fact, both of his wins against Volkan Oezdemir and Ryan Spann were through his grappling. He beat Ryan Spann in the first round because of his grappling. He took him down twice in that fight. And against Volkan Oezdemir, he shot 7 takedowns in the first round. 7. And he got 2 of them. Against Reyes and Guskov, he didn't even shoot one time. Now, I still don't think he would have won, but I think it would have increased his chances of winning if he mixed up the fight, because he is one of the only true well-rounded fighters in this division. And for him to approach those fights against those strikers by only striking with them, to be honest, it is low fight IQ. He is one of the few guys that can strike and wrestle decently, but he chose to throw his wrestling out the window and just use his decent striking to win against better strikers. Excellent win for Bogdan Guskov, and now he's going to be in the top 10, and I think Nikita Krylov took this fight way too quickly. I mean, he just got knocked out by Dominic Reyes a few months ago. You're not going to recover that quickly from a knockout like that. Now, at the same time, he did throw that kick, and I don't think any version of Krylov would have taken that shot. But regarding the brain damage and his health, that is not great. He's taken so much damage within like 4 months, 2 knockout losses within that, so hopefully Nikita Krylov takes a long time to return for his next one. Now, I think Bogdan Guskov should fight the winner of Alexander Rakic and Azamat Murzakanov. Dominic Reyes versus Jamal Hill would be a great fight as well if that gets put together. But if not, they could do Guskov versus Hill or Guskov versus Reyes. All of those would be insane fights. Dominic Reyes and Bogdan Guskov is a fight between the snipers who can land that power hand. The left hand for Reyes versus the right hand of Guskov. They're both excellent counter strikers, very precise with their shots, have good footwork. They're both fast for the division. It'd be a great fight, man. But the same thing goes for Jamal Hill, right? Jamal Hill's also like a sniper style of a striker, and I think he can give Guskov a similar type of fight. So any of those would be great. And as for Nikita Krylov, again, he should take a while to return, but a fight with Alonzo Menafield I think would be good. And Bryce Mitchell gets the decision win against Saeed Nurmagomedov. Not the most exciting fight, but some decent grappling exchanges between the two. Outside of the first round, it was just mostly grappling, and Mitchell on top. He had around like 3 minutes of control time in each of the second and third rounds. But in the first round, Saeed dropped him with a knee, perfectly timed, as Mitchell was very pressuring throughout the fight. He was backing Saeed to the fence, just like most fighters do, and he ultimately was successful. Even though like his first initial shot, especially in the third round, was countered, he was still able to adapt and come out on top. So as Mitchell was going for that double leg in the third round, it was 1-1 going into it. Saeed got that high elbow guillotine, and with the double leg, Mitchell tried to pick him up and dump him to the side, but Saeed, for a split second, was able to push off the ground with his left foot that threw off Mitchell's takedown and reversed the positions entirely. Saeed ended up on top of the guillotine. The choke seemed tight, but Saeed didn't have good body control to hold Mitchell into the choke. Ultimately, Mitchell defended it. Then by giving up his back and turtling up, Saeed tried to get the hooks in so he could go for the rear naked choke. But this was a great example of the difference in grappling between Mitchell and Saeed, because this happened to both of them in the third round. They both gave up their back, and the other guy tried to get in the hooks. When Saeed tried, though, Mitchell was on it right away. He grabbed onto the foot and rotated around, ended up in the full guard on top of Saeed, just because he grabbed onto that foot. So now Mitchell's on top. And when Saeed gave up his back to get out, as Mitchell's putting so much pressure with the head and arm choke, but he was on the opposite side to submit him. He was merely using it to hold Saeed to the mat. So when Saeed gave up his back, he didn't reach for the foot like Mitchell did. He didn't try to stop Mitchell from getting in the hooks or the figure four body lock. Instead of going for the hooks, Mitchell went straight into the figure four, around the body, and held him in that position for the rest of that round. And what about Saeed gripping onto the fence with both his fingers and his toes like 10 times in that third round? He was trying to rotate them around so he can push off the fence. At one point, he had all like 10 of his toes into the fence. Now, although it didn't change the third round that much, at what point though, even when you're gripping the fence with your toes, should the referee take a point away? I don't know. Does it have to impact the fight, or just the action of grabbing onto the fence alone is worth taking a point away? I actually don't know that. So it's a good win for his bantamweight debut, and Saeed's a fighter who's always just outside the rankings. So with a win against him, I think Mitchell should fight someone like Kyler Phillips. I think that'd be an excellent fight, who just lost to Vinicius Oliveira. I think Bryce Mitchell versus Kyler Phillips is the fight to make next. And then what about the king of Kung Fu, Muslim Salikhov, getting a 42-second knockout against the heavy favorite Carlos Leal? This was Salikhov's fastest knockout in the UFC. He's never beaten someone faster than this. And it was against a guy who everybody thought was going to beat him, right? Carlos Leal's in his prime, very powerful striker, extremely pressuring, but that aggression, that pressure got him knocked out. I thought he would win behind that. I was very wrong about this fight. I thought Leal's pressure would be the reason why he beat Salikhov, because Salikhov is such a good kicker. You give him space and he wheel kicks your head off. But Salikhov hit him with such a fast overhand. Carlos Leal did not see the punch at all. Salikhov landed it after he parried the left straight from Leal, countering with the overhand for the walk-off knockout. One-shot knockout for Muslim Salikhov. And he's on a 3-fight win streak now. Won a decision against Santiago Ponzinibbio, knocked out Song Kenan with a wheel kick, and now knocked out Carlos Leal in 42 seconds with one punch. Absolutely insane. And before this win streak, he was coming off the only loss streak of his career. He lost to Nicholas Dalby and then got knocked out in the first round by Randy Brown. A lot of people thought after the Randy Brown fight that Salikhov is just not going to be the same guy. And look at him now, 3-win streak with 2 impressive finishes. The last one against a very dangerous opponent. So I don't know how Muslim Salikhov stays in good form. He is still very fast with his strikes. He's still very technical. Amazing win by the king of Kung Fu. And Davey Grant does it again. He defeats another prospect, but this time beats Damon Blackshear by a decision. 29-28. He lost the first round, won the second and third. Blackshear had a good takedown in the first. He used a lot of strength to get it, but as soon as he got the fight to the ground, he had excellent top control, got the back, was going for the rear naked choke. At the end of the round, though, Davey Grant was able to get on top and land ground and pound shots. Second and third, his sprawl and brawl tactic worked perfectly. It looked like he was breaking Damon Blackshear as the fight was going on, because Blackshear wasn't really throwing that many strikes. Grant constantly was putting the pressure on him, kicking at the legs, kicking at the head, has some good front kicks to the body as well, and just wailing on him with those haymakers, even slipping shots by sidestepping to land those winging punches. Very mean style. Everything he throws is powerful. It just doesn't seem to slow down. I mean, ever since he lost to Chito Vera, which was like 7 fights ago, he has not slowed down or declined in any of those fights, starting with Adrian Yanez all the way to Damon Blackshear. He's performed so well in all of those. I mean, there's an argument that he beat Daniel Marcos and he beat Adrian Yanez. So Davey Grant always putting on a good performance. And then Tabatha Ricci defeats Amanda Ribas by a second round TKO with strikes in the clinch against the fence. Ribas' size advantage was definitely a big factor in this fight. Ricci kept trying to take the fight to the ground, but Ribas was way too big. She wasn't even budging from those takedowns, and she got Ricci to the ground in the first with a really good judo throw. But although Ricci was a smaller fighter, she was a lot more pressuring. Ribas didn't use her size to pressure Ricci and use her grappling against her. This is one of those rarer fights where the bigger fighter was the one who was on the back foot. It is the way Ribas usually fights, but sometimes to change the game plan and fight using the physical advantages that you have shows higher fight IQ. And you saw this with Tyson Fury in boxing when he fought Deontay Wilder, right? There was a drastic difference with the way Tyson Fury fought in each one of those fights. So Tyson Fury is by far the heavier guy. But in the first fight against Deontay Wilder, he was moving away. He was constantly bouncing around the ring, but he wasn't using his size advantage to pressure his opponent and essentially bully him in there the way he did in the second fight. That's why he beat Deontay Wilder the second time. He changed the way he fought. And I think if Ribas fought that same way, she would have a lot more success because she wouldn't have been pushed up to the fence like that. And she could have used her judo skills a lot more aggressively rather than countering Tabatha Ricci with it, right? She used her judo skills almost defensively instead of offensively. And Ricci landed that elbow directly into the eye. Hopefully her eye's okay, that, she didn't lose any eyesight, because we've seen fighters before, like Michael Bisping, who was commentating, lose his entire eye because of a detached retina from a kick to the head. This is an elbow directly into the eye, so hopefully they take care of that and her eye's okay, but it's a great win for Tabatha Ricci. She was ranked number 10 going into the fight, and Ribas was number 7. So the next fight for Ricci, I think, should be against Amanda Lemos. And for Ribas, maybe she bounces between strawweight and flyweight. She could fight Denise Gomez. That'd be a good fight. And then Billy Elekana defeats Aslan by unanimous decision, 30-27 across the board. I don't know why Aslan was confused by that. He thought he won the fight. It's like, dude, you didn't do anything. Aslan is always aggressive in his fights, always going for the finish, tons of volume, knockout power, all of that, right? Well, he didn't fight that way in this one. He tried to beat Elekana in a point fighting contest, which is the opposite of the way he usually fights. Elekana is the technician of the two. He is a lot more skilled, sitting at range and pot-shotting his opponent. He's faster than Aslan. He has better precision than Aslan, better footwork. Aslan needs to bring the fight to him in order to win this. Well, he fought Elekana's game and lost. The fight was quite boring though. I thought the commentators were right. Billy Elekana most likely thought that Aslan was going to be a lot more aggressive. Therefore, they made an entire game plan ready for that. But when he fought the opposite way, very patient, it sort of threw off their game, and Elekana had to adjust. And the way he did that was by hand fighting and pot-shotting at distance, pretty much point fighting to a decision. And I think Elekana actually has some good skills. The Bogdan Guskov fight, he took on very short notice. I think eventually Billy Elekana could do very well in the future. He has good footwork. He's very fast for the weight class. He's somewhat well-rounded. He'll shoot takedowns to offset his opponent to make his striking a lot easier to land. It looks like he has good fight IQ, although he's not going to be the most exciting guy all the time. But he will know how to win fights. So I think that's where he's going to be effective. Not necessarily putting on bangers every time and getting crazy knockouts and stuff. I think he's just going to be really good at winning fights. And then Steven wins. Power on display once again. This guy has extraordinary power, man. He dropped Mohammad Yahya, what really was 7 times. They counted only 6. They said the first one was a trip. Bro got blasted off his feet with the first right hand of the fight. I guess it's because he was throwing a kick, but that's still a knockdown though, right? I don't know. He has the most knockdowns in a fight in UFC history now. The heart of Mohammad Yahya is ridiculous. I mean, this guy came back in the second round and rocked Steven Nguyen after getting bounced off the canvas like a basketball for that entire first round. He wanted to continue the fight after all that damage to his face. His eye was all swollen, he was cut up. Although Mohammad Yahya might not be the best fighter in the world, the man has so much heart. But do you know what was the most ridiculous thing about this fight? They gave Steven Nguyen a 10-8 in the first round. Usually we would say that a 10-8 is rare, right? It's really good to get a 10-8. That round was a 10-7 at least. They could have scored that a 10-6. Steven Nguyen scored 6 knockdowns in the first round, 5 officially. If that doesn't give you a 10-7 round, what does? 5 official knockdowns in 1 round has to be a 10-7. I think it should be a 10-6, honestly. Absolutely ridiculous. He should have the most lopsided scorecard in UFC history as well. That first round was a bigger beating than what Gray Maynard did to Frankie Edgar in the first round of their rematch. It is crazy though that Nguyen couldn't finish him. Like, dropping the guy that many times does display his power, but at the same time, how could he not finish the fight after that? I think it's the heart of Mohammad Yahya. I think that's what it is, because Steven Nguyen has 1-punch knockouts in his career. He consistently hits very hard, so I think that's more credit to Yahya's heart than Steven Nguyen's inability to finish. But Steven Nguyen's a good fighter, man, and it's a great win for him. Finished the fight in between the second and third rounds due to a doctor stoppage, and they did say that Yahya did not have any fractures in his face, so that's good. And then finally, Martin Buday defeats Marcus Buchecha Buchecha by unanimous decision 29-28. How good is Shamil Gaziev? Martin Buday had the better cardio, the better striking, and I think overall, above all else, just the better composure. Buchecha seemed frantic in there, like he was rushing the takedowns, wasn't really establishing his striking first until his coaches advised him to do that in the second round, which allowed him to get the takedown afterward. But by the third round, he was tired, and Martin Buday has been 3 rounds many times throughout his career, was very comfortable in there, and twice in the fight, he was able to reverse the position, get on top of Buchecha when Buchecha was trying to get his back, so these blobs are always pulling ahead. First, they beat Ribas de Spain, and now they beat Buchecha. They beat a striking specialist, they beat a grappling specialist. I think the key is for the heavyweight to be well-rounded, so he could beat the blobs. But yeah, very good win for Martin Buday, and I think he should fight Tai Tuivasa next. I slightly favor Tuivasa, but Martin Buday does have the better cardio. It is crazy though, Buday is 7-1 in the UFC. But overall, a decent fight night card. And what'd you guys think of it? What was your favorite fight, favorite performance, and which fighter stood out for you amongst all the others? And I'll see you guys in the next video.